So time to have a look now at the various mounting options available for the side mount version of this cockpit. Remembering as well, we do have the wheel deck version 2. Now the wheel deck version would be the best choice for things like a CSL Elite, a Club Sport Wheelbase 2.5, or any other belt-driven or cog-driven wheelbase, so Thrustmaster, Logitech, and so forth. May also be the better choice for the CSL DD as well, but we're going to explore that in just a moment. We do have the option of side mounting this guy as well, but it does require a little bit of fiddling around. So we'll look at that in just a moment. But for the DD1, DD2, or small midge, Simucube 2, Simucube 1, Simagic Alpha, Alpha Mini, and so forth, anything that front mounts, you're definitely going to want to go with the side mount version of this cockpit. So let's start off by having a look at how a Simucube or small midge or Simagic and alike would mount. So we simply have our motor. The bracket is going to drop on top like so. And you can see we've got these slots here, which are going to line up with the majority of motors on the market. So just check the Next Level Racing website for complete compatibility, just to make absolutely sure it's going to fit your motor. But this will absolutely fit with the Simucube 2s, the small midge motor, and I'm pretty sure the Simagic Alpha and Alpha Mini. Unfortunately, we don't have any here that we can test, but shouldn't be a problem. So these are simply going to drop through like so. And then we put the bolts and washers on the back. Now, one thing I did just notice is you've got these little holes here, which presumably are to mount accessories and bits and pieces like that, similar to what we have on the front of the DD2, as we can see here, and the CSL DD. These aren't threaded though, so we're not going to be able to mount any accessories unless we can bolt in from the back or put a nut on the back, which obviously we can't on the small midge that we have here. And same deal with the Simucube 2 as well. It's too big to be able to get in behind there and mount anything. So yeah, it'd be good to see maybe an M6 thread tapped onto these, just so it's easy to mount in from the front, like what we have with the DD1 and the CSL. And just to note as well, this is 5mm thick steel, including the powder coating, so probably a 4mm thick steel underneath the powder coating. But anyway, let's slide that guy aside and let's quickly have a look at how we mount our DD2 and DD1 and the CSL DD. So we've got these included anodized metal brackets, which are 8mm thick, and those are also available in the blue version too if you go with the iRacing model. And all we need to do is just drop those into position facing backwards. We then grab an included DD washer, which is just a little nylon M8 washer, or two of them I should say. Drop it in, drop it in again, grab our M8 low profile DD mount only bolts, which are included in the kit as well. And again, these do fit with our included Allen key, which I just conveniently grabbed off the little tool chest on the side of the rig. Bolt that down. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing, obviously, on the other side as well. Now, when it comes to the CSL DD, a little bit more complex, and there's a couple of little things that I want to make sure are very clear here. So the CSL DD, as those who own one would know, comes with M6 T-nuts included with the base itself. You get 4 of them, and you can use those for mounting from the side as well as mounting on the base. So we can actually replicate the exact same mounting pattern from the bottom as we have with the CSL Elite or Club Sport Wheelbase 2.5, or we can also replicate exactly the same thing as we have on the DD1 and DD2, except with M6 instead of M8. So we're going to grab our metal bracket, exactly the same one as we used for the DD2, sit that on there, and you can see, because this is designed for M8 bolts, but we have M6, if we were to put our washers on there and then use an M6 bolt, we're going to run into 2 issues. So the first issue is that we now have this play in here. So even if we tighten this down, we introduce the ability for this to move around and cause a whole bunch of flex, which we don't want. Other issue, and remember we are sticking to just using the included hardware here, we don't want to have to go to a hardware store to buy anything, is the head of the bolt isn't going to sit flush with the bracket, which means we're not actually going to be able to mount this into our rig. So that's not going to work for us. So thankfully, we do have a solution to this problem and we don't need to run to a hardware store. So thankfully, Fanatec have made these channels a pretty universal size. So what we can do is we can take 2 of our full-size M8 T-nuts that came included with the cockpit. We can slide those in. And now we can mount it in exactly the same way as we mounted the DD1. So we're just gonna slide those back just a touch. We're gonna drop in our nylon washers once again, exactly the same as we did before. Our included low profile M8 bolts. Now, before we tighten this down, there is one more thing that we need to account for, and that is if we flip this over, you can see on the opposing side, we do have a little issue with the power button taking up some of that channel, which is a bit of a interesting design from Fanatec. So we'll pop the T-nut in there. And then we're just gonna need to measure exactly how far back we are here to make sure we're lined up on both sides. Obviously, we're gonna mount the bracket on this side too. So we'll just slide it back to the same distance. And we're good to tighten down. So we'll get the CSL DD mounted up on the rig, see what kind of flex we have. We'll have a look at the front mount for the small midge and Simucube style mount as well. And then we'll have a look. We'll probably do bulk of our driving test with the DD2, I think today. That'll allow us to crank the force feedback all the way up to 25 Newton meters and see what the driving experience is like. So let's get this installed and let's get testing. Okay, so because we have the luxury of 2 people here, we are able to do it this way. What I would recommend is if you are on your own, mount these pieces to the side of your wheelbase before you place it on. Gravity is your friend, and it's gonna be a lot easier to kind of drop the whole thing on and then bolt it in like this, then try to hold the wheelbase in place while you get bolts in from the side. So that is my recommendation there. But if I get Tom to come in with the wheelbase now, you can see 4 holes or 2 different mounting positions. So an upper position and a lower position. There's a 15mm gap between the holes there, or 15mm spacing, so we can adjust the height by 15mm. So we're gonna just get that roughly in position here. We're gonna go with the top hole for now and get a DD mount. Gonna break Tom's back here. Quick! Okay, I think it's safe to let go now. Yep, you're good.
Yes.
All right, so you can see that was pretty tricky even with 2 people doing it this way, so I definitely recommend mount these on first, then put it on the rig. That way you can kind of sit it in place and just screw it in. So we'll get this aligned and get those top screws tightened in. Then we've obviously got the bottom screws, which we can put in too, and that allows us heaps of angle adjustment there. So let's just get one of those in place quickly on the side so you can see for yourselves. Just let that dangle there. Get that in place. So huge amount of adjustability there. So, I mean, obviously in the formula position, you're going to ultimately have that tilted down just a little bit. But I mean, I can't see any scenario where you'd want to have that much upright. Maybe if you're doing Euro Truck Sim or something like that, maybe. But yeah, for the majority of people, there is more than enough adjustment range there. So we spent a bit of time adjusting things around and getting what I think is a pretty ideal GT seating position for me. Happy to say that I'm very, very comfortable here. The steering wheel's in exactly the right spot for me. I feel like the pedals are gonna be in exactly the right spot when we mount those too. We'll probably end up sliding these panels forward a little bit, but that's fine. We've got the scope of adjustability to be able to achieve that. And yeah, seat is very, very comfortable sitting in here. I'm not having any problems with my elbows hitting the side either. There's plenty of clearance there. If that were a problem, I could push the wheel back a little bit further, and that would bring my arms up a little bit straighter than they are. But what we have here is very comfortable, and the seat in particular is very nice and snug for my body shape at least. And I think for anybody bigger as well, because you know, bigger people tend to sort of be more out the front. There's enough of a sort of bucket here that it's nice and snug on the sides, but you know, not so much that you feel like you're too enclosed in. So I think this is a really clever design that they've gone with here. And even just in terms of adjusting, when we were moving things up and down, we didn't have any problems with cross-threading or the inserts being difficult to work with. Sometimes when they're going into fiberglass or even fiberglass reinforced plastic or FRP, they can be very difficult. They can move and they can even break off and drop off inside. We actually had that happen on the GT Ultimate seat that we had from Next Level Racing. So this is definitely an upgrade in terms of the quality. Very easy to work with. Plenty of adjustability here too. We've actually got another hole underneath this one on the front too. So we could actually go another 1.5 inches or 2 inches higher on the seat again if we wanted to, and we'd still have plenty of room to move. So yeah, really impressed so far. So let's talk about flex now. So we've got our CSL DD mounted with our Porsche 911 GT3 R wheel, and of course using the side mount as we went through before. So pulling up and down on that, you can see there's a little bit of flex there. It's not completely solid, but Most of what you're seeing in the wheel there is that little bit of play that we looked at when we looked at the CSL DD in more detail. But what I want you to pay attention to is the movement here where the wheelbase is, because that's really what's relevant to the rig. So there's a little tiny bit of movement there, but I'm pulling on that pretty darn hard. I'd say it's probably about on par with what we had with the front mount kit with the Simlabs P1X. Definitely less than we had with the default and the updated Track Racer front mount that came with the TR160. Absolutely way less flex than something like a GT Track or a FGT. So this is definitely an upgrade. I think the Simcore UM1 mount that we use on our P1X is definitely a little bit more solid than this is, but there's not a whole lot in it. And I don't think that that amount of flex is going to be a problem for anybody. We'll talk about it again when we go for a drive with the DD2 in just a minute. Yeah, impressed there as well. And there's plenty of leg clearance there too. I thought that maybe we might have issues with this being too close to my legs, but at least for me, in what I would consider to be a comfortable GT style seating position, very comfortable. And I can imagine once we get our legs up high for a Formula as well, that's not going to be a problem. So yeah, I think the more we dig into this, the more we're kind of exploring it and the more we're unpacking it, the more we're kind of realizing all those little areas where they have paid attention to detail and they've kind of thought ahead. And yeah, we're not really uncovering any problems at all so far. So just for the sake of completeness, quick test with the front mount small midge or Simucube Simagic mount too. So exactly the same as what we had with the CSL DD, which is what I expected. But if we twist on that, you'll see there's actually more flex in the wheel itself than there is in the mount. So again, I don't see this being a problem for anybody. You can see, just having a closer look at it, most of the flex appears to be just from, you know, the whole platform kind of raising and lowering. I can see a little bit in here, so the joint between here and here, it's just kind of raising up and down. But yeah, I don't want to harp on about it because I don't think it's enough that it's going to bother anybody.